and deeply shocked at what had happened.
It wasn't long afterwards, actually. The ambulance arrived, and one of the ambulance men came over to me, and another went off into the car park, and I heard, I presume it was him, shout, "This one's going to be DOA, which is dead on arrival." I didn't realise it was John.
I knew Sergeant Speed very well. He'd been a young detective of mine for a number of years, particularly at Chapeltown. And of course it did go through my mind the times we'd spent together while I was on my way there, particularly some Christmases we'd spent together and different operations that we'd dealt with together. And of course I did think about his family. I'd heard that a third bullet had been fired. So the task force came and they did a fingertip search with a view to finding anything, and particularly the bullet.
I would just like to remind you that when the gunman ran away from our two officers, he did run across the Garden of Rest, and we have obtained certain forensic evidence from near the vehicle and in the Garden of Rest. He ran across the road to Brussels Street, along Brick Street, up New York Street, onto the grass area near St Patrick's Church, and ran across into the car park of the Woodpecker pub there at the bottom of York Road. He there had a great amount of luck. He jumped over the rear wall there into a garage forecourt where that van was just being filled with petrol, and he hijacked the van at gunpoint.
Get out of the van!
What the hell's going off, mate? Just leave me then. What's the guy there?
He then drove off up Shannon Street, and really that's the last that we saw of him whilst he was with that vehicle. He went through the East End Park area of Leeds, and then the next sighting was near the post office at St Elmo Grove. And after we found the van, we did wonder whether he'd gone to some house nearby here. But you do realise that there is a post office over there. The back door is there, and that morning a post office van, security van, was to arrive there to deliver cash. And we feel now that the man walked round here waiting for the van to arrive so he could then commit the armed robbery. That enforced our armed robbery theme. We felt that that was what he was about. And this was a man who just shot down two police officers only half a mile away from here. He was still going to wait for the van to arrive and commit that robbery.
The absence of cartridge cases at the scene of the incident tended to rule out the involvement of a self-loading pistol. So we're looking preferably then at a revolver-type firearm such as this. And the witness description of the time indicated the use of a long-barreled, black-coloured revolver with a lanyard ring attached to its butt. The next thing that was very apparent to me was that there was no rifling impressions left on the bullet at all. Normally, when a bullet is fired from a conventional firearm, it travels down the barrel, and in doing so, it is engraved with a set of marks produced within the barrel. The bullets in this case had just fine scratch lines upon them. In other words, they've been fired from a crude, rough barrel, so this made them rather special. I've been through all the cartridges contained in our quite comprehensive reference collection at the laboratory. And if you look at the bullet recovered from one of your officers in Leeds incident, with this bullet down here, then the actual disposition and the dimensions of the lubrication bands indicate these are Remington 38 target wad-cutter rounds used in your incident.
I understand from inquiries that have been making that you brought a batch of bullets, some Remington 38 hollow-based wad cutters, 148 grade, from Hull Cartridge Company. Can you tell me how many you've still got left in stock?
Tracking down the origin of the bullets from that gun was virtually impossible, but it was an inquiry they had to follow. 250,000 bullets had been made, and 2 importers and 130 gun dealers were contacted in an attempt to trace the customers. There was another clue that had to be checked out through a long and tedious routine. size 10 footprints showing clear shoe treads had been found.
I'm looking for a particular type of sole on a shoe. Have you got any shoes with that particular sole?
I don't know, it's just what we're looking for. I've only seen that sole on a high-tech green flash.
Something like that. That's close, but it's not got this circle. OK, Ray, I'll see you tomorrow.
100,000 of these shoes had been made. 12,000 were size 10. All had to be traced. So too did anyone who might have seen the gunman and his accomplice when they ran into one of the most densely populated areas of Leeds.
We're doing house inquiries regarding a shooting of a police officer last Wednesday.
Two possible suspects. One's a white male, 42 years old.
No, I haven't
seen anybody like that hanging around?
No, not at all. Short grey hair. He was wearing a checked black cap. We're investigating the murder of Sergeant Speed.
We're making inquiries regarding a blue Stanton's van parked outside your house. Do you remember that vehicle in the street?
Yes, I do.
On the face of it, we had a lot, yet in truth we had so little. There were something like 100 people at the scene or on the escape route who had had a glimpse of one or both of the assailants.
Did you see the man that drove it
I saw
away?
the man, yes. Yes.
What did he look like?
Just medium build, I would say. He was tall. At least 6 foot, probably over 6 foot.
The one with the hat would have been round about 6 foot, I would think.
Would you know him again if you saw him?
No.
No.
Now, the information about the gunman varied quite a lot, and the various photo fits that we had, I think, illustrated the differences. For example, that one, said to be a man about 24 years of age with blonde hair. And then at the other end of the scale, a man here who looks more in the order of 60. And then the other two who are somewhere in between. I suppose the dilemma that the senior investigating officers got is which one is right anyway, and which ones should he put out to the public at large, asking for information about people who fit that description, and which should remain on file. And of course, the one person who could identify the gunman was PC Thorpe, or could possibly identify, and I emphasise, could possibly identify the gunman.
Mr. Conboy had asked me to come back into Millgarth to give an account of what had happened that day to the investigating officers. And I remember coming into the CID office, and I mean, you walk through the door and there were about 70 detectives there. You think, you know, better get it right this time, sort of thing. It was all right. I mean, it was just a matter of going through the events of the day and explaining to them and letting them, if they had any questions regarding the events, you know, that they wanted to ask. Mr. Conboy asked me to, picked out individual officers and asked me to guess their ages and what have you, because of the, just to ensure that the age that I'd put on the gunman was right. And I think I did fairly well, other than one who was a lot younger than he looked. I think after he was satisfied that I'd got the right sort of age for the gunman, he then asked me if there was anybody in the room that was of a similar build. And Peter Brook, the DS at that time, was certainly the one that was most similar in build, a big, heavy-set fella.
Could you come out then, Peter, please? Would you all have a real good look then at Peter Brook? This is the type of man that we're looking for. A heavily built man, round about 38, 40. Big shoulders, very strong. When you knock on the next door and you see a man of this description, you want to be giving him a really good look.
Hello, Bob.
After 6 weeks, the inquiry had made little progress. So police went back to look at criminal records. They reopened their files on every armed robbery over the past 10 years.
That is no easy task, because there are literally hundreds of armed robberies committed over that period of time. We had to look also at persons who have previously been convicted, persons who are suspected. And again, we had to see how they fit in with our particular murder. In fact, we came up at the end of the day with something like 10,000 suspects.